Welcome back to my channel and thank you for tuning into our live coding session where we're going to demonstrate how to create a web app using Python, Flask, and Bootstrap to transform this simple Excel spreadsheet into a fully functional web app. Now, before we dive in, let's take a look at our final product. Here we can access our development folder. Check out the app.py file, navigate to the particular directory where our file is located, and activate the virtual environment. Once the virtual environment is activated, we can now run the Flask application and voila! As you can see, this looks robust and it's visually appealing. We can navigate to multiple series, which is 10 different series in our 100 days IT challenge. All the data is coming from the Excel spreadsheet. It includes each and every one of those series, the details, and all the content is also dynamically generated directly from the spreadsheet. There are some blank pages, as you can see. That is because our spreadsheet has some blank information that needs to be filled in. Once we fill those in, it gets updated in real time. Now, let's proceed to build this entire web app from scratch, getting it from the Excel data into our wonderful website. Now, the first thing to do is setting up the project and the environment. To do this, we simply locate the folder where we want to work on. We create a directory. We call it demo series. Within that demo series, we need to set up our project structure, which would include a static and templates folder. Within the static folder, we'll get information like the styling, data, and images that we'll need for our project. Once those are created, we can now go ahead and create a virtual environment. The virtual environment is just a container. As you can see, demo_venv is the name we gave it. That container has dependencies and other libraries and modules that we'll need or packages. Once it's set up, we can activate that by typing in the correct command. It's different for Windows and Mac. And once it's activated, you should now have the name of your environment at the forefront of the terminal. From here, we can now use pip to install Flask. The Flask framework is what we'll use to create this web page. It's going to create a server for us to run our stuff in the server side in the backend. So Flask is set up, or rather installed. Now we want to double check what other packages do we have, because Flask is going to install some packages itself. Once all that is done, we can now head up to create our Python file and call it app.py. Next, we need to create a simple Flask web app, just like we did in the previous tutorial. So we need to import Flask class from our Flask package, create an instance, call it app, and also create some functions. Simple index function. This time around, we're not going to be printing hello to the web page. We are going to render a template. So we need to import render template. Our template will be called index.html. Also, we can route that index.html to go to the parent directory. So we use a /. With that, we need to have an index.html file. That index.html file can be easily completed by using the emmet shortcut. Just use an exclamation mark and enter. So quickly, we'll get the title of that web page, and within the body, we'll create a header, the main, that should be a main and not a body, as well as a footer element. In the header, we need the navigation to go in there. In the body, we can set it up to have multiple sections like top, mid, and bottom to make our stuff structured. And the footer, to keep our projects consistent, we're just going to get it from a previous project. That said, we can now go ahead and enter some information in the body just to make sure we can test it out and see if everything is working all right. So this is about 100 days IT challenge. We welcome everyone and enjoy the sessions, the 100 sessions within the 10 series, which is what we're going to display. All right, that's good to go. Now, if we try executing this, it's not going to work because that is our local environment. We need to go into the virtual environment. And now you can see I have an error. What error do we have? This is a syntactic error. Or should I say it's a setup error? If you look closely, you notice that everything looks good except for the name of the folder. Our folder should not be called template singular. It should be called template plural. So we need to rename this and add the S. Just because of the S, our file could not run correctly. So now that we added the S, we have, voila, a nice looking simple web page. Okay, let's kick it up a notch and create a multi-page template. This time around, we create a function called series, and we're going to render a template called series.html. So we need to also create another HTML document. We can copy and paste, or simply just create a new file, call it series.html, use our exclamation mark again, and create a series web page. Now, we have series number as a title, which we're going to populate dynamically with the argument that is being passed in our function. So our function takes an argument which is then passed to a particular web page. So this is going to help us create multiple series, not just one, and the number of series will be determined by the series number that we pass. And to make sure that this series number doesn't cause an issue in future, we want to use a converter to make sure it's an integer. So instead of having number, we can now pass in that parameter from our function all the way to the actual HTML template. So this gives us an error, obviously, because there's a space in there. Let's fix that up. And now that it's fixed up, we should be able to refresh and we're good. The next step is to dynamically render content, which we will use Ginger to leverage this to be done. So Ginger uses this simple syntax with curly braces and can be used for conditional statements, control flow, loops, and so on. So we're going to leverage it right here with a for loop to range from 1 to 11, so 10 times. And like I said, the syntax is a little bit different from HTML and Python, so there's room for error here. All right, so given that, we'll be able to use this template, and then the data is going to be inserted at one time, which is very useful, flexible, secure, and reusable. So it uses variables. In this case, we're going to say a variable is I, and that variable needs to be inserted everywhere that we have I. And those curly braces are going to be used as a denotation that we are writing code in Ginger. So we run this first time, we have an error. It looks like we're missing a comma instead of a period. So let's fix that. Now we run that again. Now we don't have a syntactic error, we have a semantic error. the semantic error, we need to use double curly braces each time we are going to try to get a variable. So that was my mistake. So change all of these single curly braces to double curly braces at a breakpoint, and there you go. We have dynamically generated 10 values using that loop. Oh, that's very useful. And we can now proceed to do the same for our series data. And the same way that variable is being passed into creating a dynamic route URL. Awesome. So far, our page looks very boring. So let's bring it to life by building our user interface with Bootstrap. And that's going to really help us look presentable. But how do we get this? Quick discussion on Bootstrap is the most popular HTML, CSS, and JavaScript framework. You can go to getbootstrap.com. We can easily get it by linking to the CDN, Content Delivery Network, or we can download templates or components, but I prefer going to Bootswatch, which has some free templates and free themes for us to use. So there's quite a good number of them. Pick any one of your choice. I've picked a few. I downloaded them, and you can also preview what it looks like. Next up, let's download and set up our static files in our project folder. As you can see, I've downloaded a bunch of Bootstrap CSS files. I'm going to move them over to the CSS folder we created earlier, and also our data, which we needed to transform to our app. We also need to get some images to make our page vibrant, images from our YouTube videos. As that way, you want to make sure the names are also correctly written so that we can directly apply this to our web page. Awesome. Now our Bootstrap that has been downloaded needs to be linked. So just like any other style sheet, we go ahead and link it in the head section of our HTML, give the correct name and point it to the correct folder. That's why we created the static and CSS folder. And from there, let's check out our page and see what happens. Yay, it looks bright and shiny. Next up, let's add a navigation bar at the top and also try to make that navigation bar dynamic. So it's simple. We go into Bootwatch, copy the code, and we don't have to build everything from scratch. We paste that navigation bar in the header section. Go ahead and try it out, and it looks just good. Excellent. Let's make a few changes. As you can see, instead of having series 1 to 10 in the body, we want to have series 1 to 10 links on the menu bar. So let's go ahead and make a few changes to the menu bar or the nav bar. So we'll go ahead and change the name from nav bar to 100 days IT. We're going to use the same looping mechanism we used earlier. Thank you, Ginger. And we're going to loop through the items or the nav items on the nav bar. We don't need all of them. We can go ahead and get rid of some of the ones that we don't need, say the pricing and accounts, I believe. And then loop through the features, leave the home in place, and also leave the drop down for later on. And the same rationale we used: double curly braces, providing the variable, and then making sure everything looks good. Execute the Flask application, and there you go. We have just dynamically created the menu simply. But the menu or navbar is only on our index page. We need to make our styling dynamic across the board. So now it's time for us to get that dynamic content styling. Okay, let's kick it up a notch here with some dynamic content styling. We'll go back to Bootstrap or Bootwatch and try to get the type of content we'll need, which will be a card that has a header and an image. So we copy the code gracefully from Bootwatch. We're not going to need the bottom card, so we'll take a look at how to remove that later on. But for now, we go into our code, identify the location where we want to paste that code, and then get the part that is needed. So in there, within our loop, instead of looping to the list of series, we're going to loop to that card. So let's get rid of the part of the card that we don't need and then make some changes also using Ginger. So I is the variable. Instead of card header, we're going to have series. If it's the first iteration, it's going to be series 1 header, series 2 header, and so on. So we're going to update the header, title, subtitle. We don't need SVG. We're going to insert our image later on. And let's take a look at what it looks like for now. So executing that, refreshing our page, looks okay. We have series 1 header all the way to series 10, header, title, subtitle, and so on. So far we're making progress. Now we need to insert the image. Remember, we copied the image and saved it earlier in our static folder. So the source would be static images, and for the series, we need to provide the value I of the series. So we also provide an alternative text, which is always a good thing. Also improves your search engine optimization. Let's try it out and see if everything works okay. Image doesn't show up. Why is that? Let's make sure we're using the right folder. The images are in there. Yep, they look good. And yeah, we're forgetting the extension .jpg. So let's try this again and see what happens. Still doesn't come up. So I'll right click in there and see. Yeah, let's first of all see if this works. Still doesn't work. So yeah, let's just go ahead and open this image in a new tab and check out the URL. So the URL is showing series. There's no number showing up. So there's a problem with our variable. Let's go check it out. It says ID instead of I. So fat fingers. Yeah, simple mistakes like that will drive you crazy. So let's fix that, and ta-da! Our web page just came to life. Looks good with images. Try to put them side by side. So I need to move a few things around here. Move the card. Yeah, we don't need that last part. I think I needed to get rid of that earlier. So now we got our section. The last part should be out. And then everything looks good. Move them around. And we also can make some changes to Bootstrap. Change the size of the columns and then run it and see what it looks like. Alright, so the columns look smaller, but we're still having one for each line. We need to have multiple per line. Let's see where our code is going wrong. Okay. We don't need multiple divs. Let's go ahead and get rid of that multiple div. Make sure that everything is good. Okay. We can select everything and also format it nicely so it's easy for us to dive in. Again, styling usually takes the most amount of time. You know, it's an art. Some people enjoy it, some don't. So let's keep digging. Our changes did not make much sense, but I see. I think we need to move that. And add another div. Oops, div. Yep, add another div out there at the bottom so that we add spaces in between our cards. So let's execute that and see. Yep, looks like there's enough space. But then if you look closely at the loop, where am I? Let's collapse everything again. I think I can see clearly. All right, so we got our top section, the middle section. The row should be outside the loop, okay? Otherwise, it's just going to keep creating a new row each time. So we're going to fix that and move the div outside of the loop. And once again, let's try running this function, this Flask. And there you go. We have them side by side. Now we just need to set up the columns to be a little bit wider, and then all should be good. And there you go. I think that should be good for now. At least we got everything in there. We just need the content itself right now. You know, the style looks okay. You know, we need to go ahead and put the actual values, the data from the spreadsheet. All right. Okay, so before we actually get to the data, we need to continue with more styling for our header and our footer. So we'll go back to an old project to get the footer. And this is what the old project looked like. The footer looks really nice with some small tiny images at the bottom centralized. And the header also looks good. When you scroll, it's sticky. So it's not the case right now. When we scroll, it's not sticky. So let's go check out that old demo project, which you can also watch the video on our CSS front end playlist. All right, so we copied everything over. Not yet. No, this is what it looks like. We have images that are coming in from the demo image folder. So we need to copy those to our static images folder, paste them in there, make sure they're okay. All right. And then within that style, we need to get a few of those stylings. So we know the image style needs to be fixed, so it's rounded edges. The icons need to be addressed, the footer as well as the logo image. We're not going to bother with logo image for today. And we can go ahead, create a new style. Now that that has been created, we're going to copy the particular rules that we need for CSS from our previous project. We need to set this header, main, as well as the footer. And there's a whole shebang of all the things we did in this file at the top if you need to read for your sanity. And we need that image and social icon as well. And once everything is copied over to our new style, we can go ahead and format it to look nice. Visual Studio Code has that built-in format to format our document, or you can use an extension. All right, everything looks good. Now we need to make sure that after copying it to our template file, to our index file, we need to point it to the correct location of those images that we just copied over. And from here, we can now try running that Flask web app and see what we get. And we got some huge icons. Why is that? That's because we need to go back to the head section of our index file and link up the new CSS style that we created. So it's located in our static CSS folder. Once we link that up, we can now go ahead and run that one more time. So we need to kill the session, run it, and the server goes off. We refresh it, and voila, it looks nice, centralized. And if you scroll to the top, you see that the header is sticky, but it's got part of it hidden, and that's because we needed to make sure that the main part has a margin top, the main section within our body. So let's check it out. If you look closely to the new style, it looks like we do have the margin top in there. So what is wrong with that? Oh, on line 57, we have body instead of main. So we need to update that. We had the name of the wrong element. So after doing that and refreshing, everything looks a lot better now. Awesome. Next up, we finally get to make everything consistent. So, in order not to have to make changes to every single HTML file, we use a base template. Otherwise, we'll have to go into the series.html and make the same changes. And if we had 10 HTML documents, we had to do that 10 different times. That is very tedious and not very useful. So, thankfully, we have base templates, which we can create a new base.html file. Copy everything over from our index.html, which is what we've been working on so far. Both everything all the way to the header, and then everything from the footer to the bottom. Because we need consistent headers and footers. The only thing that's going to change on our web page would be the main section. So in our base.html file, we can now also leverage Ginger. How do we do that? We create placeholders, blocks that can be inherited or overwritten by the children of whoever extends this base.html template. So using Ginger syntax again, we need to go ahead and create a block for the title as well as a block for the content. The title is in the head section of your HTML file so that each web page will have its own title. All right. So again, make sure that our links are all correct. This is the one and only place we are going to be making changes to each and every one of the pages for the header and the footer. So we need to pay close attention to this. Now, instead of the drop down, I'm going to update this to have all series with a drop down in there. I think that's good for user experience. And using our same loop, we're going to loop through the series again and have a drop down that's going to have series 1 all the way to series 10. We also have a separation or a divider and have all series, and that should take us simply to the web page or the home page. Now, within the index file, we can now go ahead and get rid of this extraneous stuff, and using Ginger syntax again, we get to extend the base.html template. Once it's been extended, we can now go ahead and override the block title to be what we actually need for this particular index, which is 100 days IT. We need to do the same thing as well for the main section. So we just move the main section into contents block, or the block content per se, and that should be enough to get everything done. So this is a very useful and extensible way to get it done. Likewise, we do the same thing for our series. Copy it over, make sure that the series title reflects the correct title, as well as the series content reflects the correct content. So we're going to use series number, which has been passed in our series function, and we should be good to go. Now we see there's a dash in between those icons, which I really don't like. We'll get to address that later. But each time you have all these small issues, it takes time to fix them, but that's okay. So let's go ahead and make sure that we have our contents within the right tag. So in here we have main and a few sections. So let's go ahead and do the same thing for the series.html. So we'll create 3 sections, and each section is a container, and maybe give it another class as well. A top section, mid section, and bottom section. That way each one is unique. Now we can move our header into the top section. Later on, we get to add content into the mid and bottom section. For now, let's run it, and there you go. The top section looks good. And real quick, let's go back into the base.html and get rid of that extra space in our link, which is causing the space in between the icons to have a dash. So there you go. It looks clean and we're good to go. Next, we need to import and process our Excel data. And from then, you will see me on part 2. So check out part 2. With this, we've already created a multi-page web app, but we need to get data running in there smoothly and dynamically. So thank you for watching. Please do remember to like, subscribe, share. Let me know what comments, concerns, or questions you have down there in the comments, and I'll be very happy to help you with that. Awesome. Catch you on the next video.